Self-interest in disguise. At the start of the 19th century, slave labor allowed for the economic prosperity of the U.S. With the end of the Civil War in 1865, the Confederacy was defeated and slavery was eventually abolished. Without the work of the slaves, the U.S. now needed to find the cheapest possible laborers that would continue to turn the gears of industries, particularly that of the agricultural industry. Of course, white Americans really preferred not to do the hard work necessary in those industries. So then, who could? In the Treaty of Paris of 1898 that ended the Spanish-American War, the U.S. finally acquired Puerto Rico. Shortly after, many U.S. corporations claimed thousands of acres in Puerto Rican land for the cultivation of cash crops. As a result, not enough land was available for Puerto Ricans to produce food to even feed themselves. And so, natives were left only with the option of importing food. However, the newly instituted Foraker Act forced Puerto Rico to trade only with the United States. As a result, importing food remained expensive and beneficial only for the U.S. With so much dependence on the United States, the economy of Puerto Rico suffered. Even so, many U.S. economists insisted Puerto Rico's economic problems were due to the region's overpopulation. In order to resolve that issue, Puerto Rican workers were to be moved from Puerto Rico to other parts of the United States. Labor contracts for Puerto Ricans, an agreement for labor in return for housing and some wages, were the methods U.S. employers used in order to acquire the cheap labor of their Latin American neighbors. With many of the promises in the labor contracts proven to be unfulfilled, the truth of why the U.S. assisted Puerto Rico is exposed. In reality, they did not import many workers to help Puerto Rico's economic crisis. Instead, it's to serve U.S. interest, to find another source of exploitable, cheap labor. In a 1904 letter to the editor of the New York Times, one white American expresses his strong favor for using Puerto Rican workers for the purpose of serving white American interests. The writer proclaims, "It is our own interest to give employment to these people, as they will doubtless return with their earnings, in part at least, so that this money will serve to help develop our island paradise. All things being equal, preference should be given to those under our own flag." These sentiments unveil the dark pattern of American motives behind the assistance they choose to provide for their Latin American neighbors. Instead, for the purpose of providing Puerto Ricans the much-needed financial security during a period of economic crisis in their homeland, the author of this primary source reflects the general public's true attitude toward the reasoning for contracting their labor. Masked as efforts to remedy their massive unemployment, exploiting their labor allows industrial projects in America to flourish. Also, funneling money back into Puerto Rico provides the necessary resources to build for white Americans their coveted and highly desired tropical vacation homes. Likewise, evidence for the American pattern for hiding a selfish motive under a fake act of service is observed all the way back to the Monroe Doctrine. While many would think it had successfully characterized the United States as a defender of democracy for the Latin American nations and all of the Western Hemisphere, the treatise was outwardly violated by the U.S. themselves, as borderland expansion in the early 1800s meant annexing Mexican-owned lands in Texas. Utilitarianism and selfish intentions were factors driving Americans to assist impoverished Mexicans in the San Gabriel Valley in the early 20th century because they were afraid of the consequences of interacting with disease-ridden people. And it is these same reasons seen in their contracting of Puerto Rican laborers in order to replace the cheap labor lost since the end of slavery that we can see a pattern of U.S. interests disguised as an act of service.